Hey, this is Alpha for Shock's video guide, and today we're going to be taking a look at a little bit of Protoss versus Protoss cheese defense against a cannon rush in Heart of the Swarm. Now, as you may or may not know, if you're coming from Wings of Liberty, in Heart of the Swarm, cannon rushes were nerfed indirectly by the removal of the pylon's ability to power structures up cliffs. Basically what this means is that it's no longer possible to build pylons on the low ground and then power cannons on the high ground. And this of course weakens cannon rushes a lot because that was one of the key aspects of making a cannon rush work on like any given map. So now it's a little bit more circumstantial, but that doesn't mean it can't still work. So we're going to see that one of the reasons that it's still kind of an effective surprise strategy is that most people kind of figure that cannon rush isn't really viable anymore, and because of that they elect to kind of play a little bit blindly. So we see that we've spawned on Neoplanet S, and in the bottom left corner we have the blue Protoss Believe, whom we'll be following for this match, and in the top right corner we have his opponent, the red Protoss Crawler. We see that Crawler is already going for that Forge pretty early, about the same time that you would normally get a Gateway. Now, Believe is doing a good job scouting for proxies and so on, and he does see that there's this probe in here, but he is going to take both of his gas, and you see that this probe kind of just retreats, because it doesn't really seem that interested in you know, what Believe is doing with his gas and so on. So right away that's a bit suspicious, but it doesn't look like Believe is particularly noticing. There is another probe here from Crawler to continue you know, building those cannons, because you don't want to be super obvious about it. We see that Believe is going to be continuing to go into a sort of very standard PvP opening. Looks like it's going to be, you know, 2 guys in each gas geyser, following up with a perhaps double gateway. Now we see that Believe is going to scout this, and he's going to be, oh no, okay, so there's this cannon rush going on, so he immediately knows, so some probe's going to get pulled, going to see if he can take out this cannon. Usually what happens in this kind of scenario is that you're very, very much taken unawares by these kinds of cannon rushes, and what you basically want to do is take as little damage as possible while not completely forgoing macro. Alright, so Believe, you know, making sure to see what's happening. He's going to make a Zealot, he's going to add a second gateway, he's going to cut Warp Gate because it's really totally useless against the cannon rush. Use this Zealot to kind of clear out these probes a bit, and stop them from, you know, wantonly building cannons forever. But really, you're not really safe against a cannon rush until you get a couple of stalkers out, because you really need to be able to pick off the probes quickly before they can retreat. And you also need to be able to trade with the cannons without being in range of like 5 other cannons. And we do see that Crawler is continuing to push his way forward. The Mothership Core is out. That's obviously great help because it's another ranged unit. So we see that this cannon here is going to go down and get cancelled. You know, Mothership Core does take a lot of damage from cannons, but these probes are going to get misrallied because they actually kind of block themselves off a little bit. So there is going to be some free shots in there. But this cannon is going to go down. Mothership Core is doing okay. Believe the most important thing here is to completely abandon this gas geyser, okay? Add more gates, okay? Put all of your Chrono Boost into a combination of Warp Gate and as many Stalkers as you need in order to not die. Because as long as you can stop a ton of cannons from going up, okay? And as long as you don't lose a lot of probes, and as long as your tech is kind of in this defensive sort of position, then you're probably going to be okay. Because really, I mean, the chances are that the cannons are not going to get all the way over here. You know, a bit of sloppy micro there, Believe losing a Stalker. But, you know, at this point, it's really not so much about preserving one's unit count as it is about preserving one's tech. Because, you know, the worst thing that can happen against the cannon rush is when you lose probes and when you get both of your gas geysers denied. Because when that happens, there's just no way. Believe Stalker are going to get picked off there. But we can really see how much of a boon this photon overcharges, and this is really key in defending cannon rushes, because basically what it means is that no matter how badly you defend, as long as you're able to survive until this photon overcharge gets out without losing too many probes and without getting your gas denied, then you're going to be able to pretty much prevent the cannons from coming any closer. And that's actually really a huge deal in a lot of ways, because the only way a cannon rush can really succeed is if it gets pretty much to your mineral line. We see that Believe is going to be following this up by putting more guys on gas, because, you know, we want to be warping in mostly stalkers against this kind of cannon composition, because, you know, obviously zealots are rather useless in this sort of position, and those stalkers do cost gas. And furthermore, we know we have our mothership core that costs 100 gas. We also, very important, want to be getting this robotics facility, because while it's unlikely that we're going to be facing any DTs, some people, you know, they realize very early that their cannon rush isn't going to work. They take double gas, 3 workers on each, throw down a Twilight Council very early, and then some Dark Templar come in to follow up very shortly after the photon cannon rush. And honestly, that's like the worst way to lose. Defend a cannon rush with no damage, only to die to a DT follow-up. So there's really nothing to lose by getting a robotics facility. Usually your mothership core can kind of get in here and see what's going on. As we see, this mothership core sees that there's Forge, you know, this is being chrono boosted here. Unfortunately, Stalker is going to come out at a really kind of unfortunate time and pretty much kill this, because it's only like 2 energy away from recall. Yeah, he's going to try and get the recall off, but it's not going to be enough. Anyways, Believe going to just keep making observers, because really the only thing at this point that can kill him is Dark Templars, because there's no way that this guy is going to have had Warp Gate tech for very long. As we can see, he was still chrono boosting it, so there's really no way that he's going to have it for much longer. We do see that some probes getting picked off here, which is always good, and we see that we're forcing this photon overcharge out. So that's always really effective. One of the things you really want to do is you want to, as we can see, keep making observers. Warp in some units at home, leave an observer at home in case there is a Dark Templar coming, because we did see the Twilight Council, and we did see the double gas mining. Take a Nexus, okay, and you might as well poke across the map with your Stalkers, because there's no way that they can really die. At worst, you're just going to get pushed back by Photon Overcharge, and when that happens, you just walk away, because it means that you know, the other Protoss player is playing pretty passively. So we're sending this Zealot in here to make sure there's no expansion going up, putting a couple of pylons around just in, you know, to you know, possible warp-ins down the line. We do see that Crawler is going for that Dark Templar Shrine, and we do see that, you know, more observers coming out. That's always really good. And we see that this natural expansion is starting to get saturated. Chrono Boost going into the probes, because, you know, there's really nothing that the other Protoss could really have at this point in terms of raw unit count that would be able to beat you know, this number of Stalkers. You also want to get a couple of sentries in case your opponent tries to warp in like a bunch of Zealots and just push you. Sentries kind of render those Zealots a lot less effective and allow you to really put yourself in a good position. And we do see that we're going to follow this up with Colossi, because we saw that there was a Twilight Council, okay, which means that either the Protoss player is going for a macro game, which is unlikely, or, as we can see with our observer, he's going for DTs. And if he's going for DTs, that means we want to be going into Colossi, because once you get Colossi, even if this Protoss player were not to be aggressive with these DTs and just try to macro up, Colossi really just beats Zealot Archon pretty hard. If you engage properly and once you get that critical mass, because the Zealots kind of just evaporate. But at this point, you know, Colossi are still a ways away. So we're just going to pump out an Immortal, just, you know, for that extra tanking. And we do see that we're actually up quite a bit of supply. And that's very standard when you defend a cannon rush and just macro behind it. I mean, you know, if your opponent is going for some sort of all-in, I mean, and you spent all your chrono boost on probes, obviously you're going to have a lot more units than them. Now, we did scout this with our observer, and we see that it's basically an Archon push. The idea with this is to use the Archon to break force fields, okay, and then to run these Zealots in. But, I mean, we just have way too many units. We've walled off, which you should always do, okay, when you see this push coming, okay, and this push is really just not going to do anything, because there's just no way for him to push into this. I mean, he's just going to lose all of his Zealots and Stalkers and Archons attacking this, And, by the time he gets through, we might even have Colossi, we could have Void Rays, we could have DTs of our own. We have a fully saturated natural expansion. We're up 40 supply. I mean, the idea of this push from the red Protoss player is, okay, the Cannon Rush didn't really work. We killed a couple of Stalkers, but didn't really do anything. Wasted a lot of minerals, delayed our Warp Gate tech a lot. The other Protoss player is probably feeling really confident. So if I warp in a bunch of Zealots, I could maybe take him off guard because he's probably warping in mostly Stalkers. And with the DTs, sometimes after a Cannon Rush, a lot of people like to either skip Robo completely and go for a really fast tech in order to immediately try and punish the Protoss who tried to Cannon Rush, or they will go a single Observer and then try and go for something aggressive like a Warp Prism or Immortals. And if they go for a single Observer and it goes all the way across the map, then they're not going to have one at home to defend against the DTs. But in general, once you defend the Cannon Rush, you're usually in a really good position. So that was really what we're looking at here. And the keys to defending a Cannon Rush, to quickly sum up in Heart of the Swarm, are, first of all, you want to make sure that you build your tech in a position which is not vulnerable. Okay, there's really no reason to ever build your tech near the ramp, because no matter what happens, I mean, it's not really going to help you. It's going to be easier to scout. It's going to be more vulnerable if your opponent goes for some sort of warp gate rush, and it's going to be vulnerable to cannon rushes. It's going to be vulnerable to proxy gates. Basically, nothing is good about putting all of your tech near the ramp. So you want to put it like in a safe place. Secondly, you want to get that mothership core out as early as you can without having to cut a lot of Stalkers. And if that means that you have to delay your Warp Gate a bit, that's fine, because your opponent doesn't even have Warp Gate researching. So you're fine. All you need to do is Chrono Boost out these Stalkers, okay? Get maybe 2 to 3 gates. Get the mothership core out and keep the mothership core alive, because as long as you are able to kind of hold back the cannon wave, once your mothership core gets photon overcharge, you're pretty much safe. There's really no way that the cannons can move any farther forward during that window of photon overcharge, which lasts quite a while. So, it lasts full 60 seconds. So nothing is coming near your Nexus during that 60 seconds. And in 60 seconds, you can easily get out a lot more units and tech to deal with the cannons themselves. So that, in a nutshell, is how to deal with the Cannon Rush in Heart of the Swarm and the Protoss versus Protoss matchup. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to check out our existing library of strategies, tips, and more, and we'll see you next time.